Hello, beautiful people. This is Samson Williams from Crowdy Advisors, a small business simplified, crowdfunding demystified. And so people often ask me, how much does it cost to start a startup, or what's the sticker price for a startup? And then they ask, well, how much does crowdfunding cost? So they sort of go hand in hand, these two things. How much does it cost to start a startup? And then what is the cost of crowdfunding? And so typically we have our class for raising money, our master class for equity and debt crowdfunding, where we go over this. I was like, hey, we might as well make a video about this. Somewhere there's a link where you can get a copy of this workbook that helps you walk through the actual cost of equity and debt crowdfunding as a business or a startup. So let me wave at the camera. There we go. We're back to being adjusted. So we're just going to jump right in it by sharing my screen, because you actually really want to see what is the cost of a startup. So we're sharing my screen. You guys can see this, the sticker price of a startup. And it's actually really, really simple. We're going to start at the basics and go through it. Um, yeah, just your startup sticker price. So people are always asking, how much does it cost to start a startup? Well, that's a really good question, because there's really no set price. Earlier this year, I didn't start a startup. I got an existing business, and we went from zero in revenue to $6 million in 90 days. But that was based on a phone call with one of my frenemies, a casual enemy of mine who we get along because occasionally we like to make money together. But in that instance, that's really an economic narrative that's not realistic or sustainable for most people, because you might not have frenemies like I have, or your network. You might not have built that network, because I've been maintaining that frenemy relationship for almost 2 decades. And let me tell you, it's almost not worth it. So when you say how much does it cost to start a startup, you can actually start a startup for very cheap. Sometimes it's a phone call where you can make a deal and arrangement. Other times you actually need to go through the process of standing up that business. So at a minimum, if you're going to actually think about this, you're going to spend between $1,000 and $210,000 to start a startup. I know you're saying that sounds so stupid. What are you talking about, Samson? Why such a big range? Because basically you're saying you're going to spin the ocean. You're going to spin the sea just to get a shot at the ocean. So you do need to incorporate your business. You do need to file your paperwork with local, so you can pay local taxes, federal taxes, etc. So you're going to have about $1,000 if you do it yourself. Of course, you should always hire a professional so they can incorporate your business, whether you're in the state of Florida or DC or Delaware, it doesn't really matter. Incorporate your business where it makes the most sense for your business. You might not know what that actually means yet, because this is your first time as an entrepreneur, so you're trying to figure it out. And that's why you might actually spend somewhere around the range of $5,000 to $6,000 starting your startup, but you can start it for as little as $1,000. It's actually just to incorporate your business and be an official business. Otherwise, you just have a really expensive hobby. And you'll know you'll have a really expensive hobby when you go to scale your business, and it's like, oh, I don't have a bank account. So for my business, which means you have an expensive hobby, then there's some other tax things. So to start a business is a big range between $1,000 and $200,000 to start a business. Yes, it can be done with less, particularly if you're thinking, hey, I just want to have a business that generates, 20, 30, 40, 50, $100,000 a year, versus you're saying, hey, I'm going to start this $1 billion business. You're not going to start $1 billion business for, $1,000. It's very unlikely, because there's some sunk cost in that. And so you're going to have to figure those out. We actually list them out here in this workbook for you. Some of the sunk costs of starting a business, because of course you're thinking, yeah, I want to raise money for my business to grow my business, but you got to have a business first and foremost to actually do that. So the reason we actually talk about the sticker price for a startup is because folks always ask, how much money does it cost to engage in equity crowdfunding? And equity crowdfunding, or investment crowdfunding, is made possible by the Jobs Act, the Jumpstart Our Businesses and Startups Act, that was signed into law in 2016, which enables your customers, your consumers, retail consumers, to invest in your business, whatever your business is. But you've got to be a business. And it goes back to the sunk cost of, you got to start your startup or start your business before you can get investors. So the question always comes up to, how much does it cost to engage in equity crowdfunding? And so I was like, oh, we should probably figure this out. And so we worked with a bunch of clients and we figured that out. So you can probably see this screen is pretty straightforward. It's not an end all be all of how much does it cost to engage in Jobs Act regulated by the SEC and FINRA crowdfunding, but it's a really good start. Again, in this workbook, we have a worksheet where you grab what's called a pen and you write down your own personal budget. And so you can get this off of crowdyadvisors.com. But for the moment, if you're watching this video, somewhere at the bottom of this video is a link so you can download a copy of this Excel spreadsheet so you can start playing with it yourself. Let's increase the size of this right quick. Boop, there we go. So we're going to talk about what is the price, the estimate. Again, these are estimates. They're not each person that has a unique situation. So some of these estimates won't apply to you because if you've already had a business for a while, if you already pay for a bookkeeper, if you already pay for a CPA, if you already have your website designed, you're not going to have, you've already paid those sunk costs. They're not free, they're just sunk costs. You've already incurred them. You actually paid for them already. If you build an amazing, huge, super big community of followers, of fans, you have 50,000, 100,000, 2 million fans who are they just love your product, then you don't have to actually spend that much money on marketing and advertising to grow that community. Because here's the deal when you go to do equity crowdfunding or investment crowdfunding. Crowdfunding in general, it actually works best with the crowd. So most people, they have this idea, the light bulb goes out. The question is, do you have a crowd of people who are interested in your idea, who are interested in either being customers or funding your idea, investing in your idea? Either way, you got to build this community. So here are just some items that you can think about to consider as you try to wrap your head around, well, how much does it cost to start a startup and how much does it cost to engage in equity crowdfunding? Because again, starting a startup, those are sunk costs. With those sunk costs have to be paid before you can actually go raise money for your business. Because if it ain't a business, you're just a wanapreneur. You've got a really expensive hobby. So when you go to raise money, you're probably going to need these things completed at a minimum. At a minimum. Again, this may not be unique for you, but one of the things you definitely can't get away is your Form C completion. If you don't know what Form C is, just Google Form C or Jobs Act Form C. Form C is that form you have to submit, your business has to submit to the Securities and Exchange Commission 21 days before your offer goes live on a FINRA regulated crowdfunding platform. If you don't know what all those words mean, you can check out our book, Raising Money, and our workbook details these. And there's a bunch of other free videos on crowdyadvisors.com that can walk you through some of the terms if you're not familiar. And of course, you can always just book time with Maureen to have this conversation. So Form C, you're probably going to pay at a minimum $3,000. That's like bare bone basic because you have all your books in order. If you don't have your books in order, well, it's not easy to complete a form if you're disorganized. So really it's like, oh, do I have my 90-day plan? Is my 90-day plan already figured out? Because if it's not figured out, then it's going to cost you even more to get your Form C completed. Typically, lawyers complete this form. You don't always have to be a lawyer to have this form completed. Typically, though, historically, they're the people who help you do that. Maureen is a lawyer. She's licensed in Florida, DC, and New York, and she's really familiar with all of these things. So there's also some regulatory and compliance reviews that need to be done. Again, you can get a compliance officer to do that for you. They may or may not be a lawyer, but again, that's just something you need to get done. And now we get into here on items 12, really through 27. Those are just really the basic bare bones of your business. Do you got a CPA, a bookkeeper, a tax advisor, project manager, virtual assistants? Do you have web marketing tools like Hootsuite or MailChimp or something? Do you have a brand, right? What's your brand? What's your brand strategy? What's your product? What's your product strategy? You could easily spend a couple $100,000 just coming up with either your brand or your product if you haven't already done that. That's why that sunk cost in starting a startup, it varies so much because you as the individual may be your brand, or you might have Orbit's gum that is your brand. It's sort of like a toss-up. So then marketing execution, you actually need to execute all the plans that you put forth. And so if you're going to execute your marketing? What does that actually mean? Are you capable of doing that? Is marketing your business, or do you need to hire a professional to do it for you? You're always going to have some amount of money for AdWords. And AdWords is you're going to advertise on Google and Facebook and Instagram and social media in general, unless you've already paid that sunk cost and spent the time, the energy, and the sweat equity to build your community. If you haven't already built that community, if you're going to go grow your business or get the crowd to invest in your crowdfunding campaign, well, then you need an ad budget if you haven't already paid that sunk cost through your time, energy, and sweat labor. So $30,000 is actually not that much money to spend on an AdWord campaign. If you've never done this before, you're like, oh my God, that's so much money. If you run an existing business, you're like, oh, I'm going to spend $3,000 a month, maybe $5,000 a month for 3 to 6 months to run an ad for your man, I should have got a sponsorship from these guys because this is the only product I have around here. I like Orbit Gum. Like to advertise your good product or service. And I'm looking for my dope coffee mug, which I'm going to find in a minute. Anyway, you might also have a social media manager because, again, that's not your domain. That's not your expertise. And typically when you go to raise money using equity or debt crowdfunding, you're really looking at a 3 to 6 month window of people you need to pay to do something. Or you can do these things yourselves, but each of these items is something distinct that typically you need to hire a professional to do. If you can do them all yourselves, congratulations, that's awesome, that's great. The question is, do you have the time? Content creator is not your social media manager. It cannot be. You do need to make a video. You need a really strong video that showcases what your good product or service is and compels the crowd, the audience. Why should we invest in your business? And of course, you have to follow all of FINRA rules and SEC and CFPB and all of people's rules for what you actually advertise, what you can say, and where you can say it. This is why you might want to get a compliance person. Then you might have a campaign manager. And the reason you have a campaign manager is because all of the items listed above, well, you actually have your day job. You have your regular job. You're running a business. You might also be employed. Do you have time to do all of this other stuff in addition to running your business, running your day-to-day? Because you got to keep that revenue coming. Got to keep that revenue coming. You might have someone who's specifically in charge of biz dev. And by biz dev, I mean strategic partnerships. So it's another item that you might need to pay for anywhere from, again, 3 to 6 months. Budget something in there. Networking. Before the days of the coronavirus, you would go out, meet, greet, shake hands, sniff butts, and rather meet, greet, shake hands, and kiss babies. I call conferences where humans go to sniff each other's butts. And so it's like, oh, how do you actually get to be known in the industry, be an industry leader? Because it's actually much easier to raise money for your good product or service in your business if you're well respected or known in your industry as an industry expert, which requires you to do networking. In the days before the Rona, you could spend $3,000 to $9,000 super easy. You can actually spend that on one conference, much less the numerous conferences that you'd actually go to. You should always get a personal trainer because let me tell you, there's nothing as lonely, depressing, and stressful as being an entrepreneur. You may not know that, you may not believe that, but trust me, it is true. So a personal trainer will help you stay in physical shape, which will help you increase your odds of staying in mental shape. Because let me tell you, entrepreneurship is just a beast emotionally and financially. It's a great way to break up with your loved ones and lose relationships. So yeah, we'll talk about that on some other time. So if you actually go to raise money on a platform right now through FINRA, Financial Regulatory Authority, there's roughly 52 FINRA approved platforms as of October 2020. Pick whichever one you feel works with you. If you call Maureen or connect with Maureen from Crowdy Advisors, she'll go through the process of trying to help you go through criteria to select which funding portal works best for me. They charge an application fee, they charge a success fee, they may charge a deferred revenue fee. I think that's Start Engine who does that. And so again, you need to investigate which platform actually works best for me. When you actually raise money on that platform, if you raise $1 million, $500,000, $100,000, they're going to take a success fee. It doesn't actually matter how much you raise. They're going to take a success fee, and it's somewhere between 6 and 10% of the raise. So just keep that in mind. If you raise $1 million, someone's going to charge you the platform is going to charge you between 6 and 10% of that raise. And so you have to pay them afterwards. So if you raise $1 million and their platform fee is 6%, well, then now you owe them $60,000 from the raise. Got to keep that in mind. They may also take 2 to 5% equity in the raise. Just keep that in mind. It varies from platform to platform. This is why you need to read your terms and agreements of the platform, which is why you might actually want to get either a compliance person or a lawyer to help you guide you through that process. Deferred revenue, that's a feature that some of the crowdfunding platforms take. So they're like, oh, you owe us this amount of money. You should have some contingency fees. I don't really care what it is. You need to put that down. Travel and conferences, they don't exist as much, but trust me, it's still there. It takes money to make money. So when you're looking at all of these, and again, you can download this Excel spreadsheet because I know you guys can read. So you can download this Excel spreadsheet, pop in these numbers yourself. You just should be thinking, hey, I'm going to pay about $35 an hour for a professional to do something 15 hours a week for at least for a month, which is 4.3 weeks. And this is what that comes out to. If you actually want a realistic budget to raise $1 million using Jobs Act regulation crowdfunding, you're going to end up around $250,000. And it's like, holy shnikes, Samson, why am I going to spend $250,000 to raise $1 million? Well, some of it, the majority of it, that's that sunk cost right here. That's that sunk cost. Those items right there, those are just part of being a business. But you do need to break out and categorize and capture how much of your current business, if you have an existing business, how much of their time, resources, and energies are you allocating towards your fundraising process, which is crowdfunding, investment crowdfunding. Because most people, they don't think like, oh yeah, my virtual assistant is going to work on this crowdfunding project, or my assistant or my project manager is going to work on this crowdfunding initiative 15 hours a week. What does that mean? How much are you paying them anyhow just to do that? Now that's again, it's a line item. So those are some of the sunk costs. Excuse me. Those are some of the sunk costs in crowdfunding in general. So you want to be aware of this, particularly if you're a startup where you're going to have to create this infrastructure, pay for the infrastructure to actually run a business for these items here to actually run a business. And note, none of this includes the software like MailChimp, like Hootsuite. There's some line items for it, but some of the, if you're saying, hey, we're going to use Salesforce, that's going to cost you your entire budget from the get-go. So again, this is an estimate. Everyone's cost is unique. It's not hard and fast, but it's going to cost you roughly $250,000 to run a $1 million Reg CF campaign in hopes that it is successful. And just because you spend this $250,000 doesn't mean at all that you're going to hit your raise, that you're actually going to raise the amount of money that you're asking for. It just means, well, that's just how much it costs to play this game. That's just how much it costs to go out on the internet via social media in a regulated fashion, engage strangers, and try to convince them to invest in your dream, in your good product or service. So those are the 5 things that you need to keep in mind about what are the approximate costs of investment crowdfunding. And whether you're doing Reg C, it costs about the same if you do Reg D. There's a lot of NAs here. But again, in the Reg D world, it costs roughly the same because in the Reg D world, it is assumed that you've already paid for this infrastructure. So you've always got to pay for infrastructure first and foremost. So for the moment, that is it. That is the sticker price of not only a startup, but also the sticker price of equity or investment crowdfunding. Hopefully you found this recording useful or helpful. For more information, visit crowdyadvisors.com. That's CROWDIE advisors.com. I've also find Crowdy Advisors on the internet, on social media, Twitter, LinkedIn, etc. So that's it for the moment. We'll drop a link to our Raising Money workbook, and this walks you through. It's something you can write in, and it walks you through how the process of raising money, because at the end of the day, whether you're going to use Reg A, Reg A plus, Reg D, Reg CF, you're raising money. If you're getting on the internet and you're asking strangers to invest in your good product, service, or dreams, that's called crowdfunding. So some people do donations, some people do rewards. We're not talking about donation and reward crowdfunding. We're primarily focused on debt and equity. So that's it for the moment. My name is Samson Williams, and just remember, the odds can't be in your favor if you never play the game. So good luck, read up, be prepared, and I'll talk to you in the next orbit. Peace.